we ask that,
Actually, we want the phone box.
oh,
Go, put the ring in the fire. What we want to do is, we want to do a little surprise for you guys.
okay. At any rate, this is an informational meeting. It's not an open debate, and those responsible for any continued behavior designed to create problems for all others interested in hearing the speaker will be asked to leave. It's important, I feel it's important, and I think you all do, that you have every right to hear the information and be educated, and then you can make your decision. But if somebody is disrupting you, talking, next to you, that is unfair and not courteous. And we will, if someone continues to bother people, to ask them, please, to leave. Again, if you've already signed in, please sit, find a seat. There's plenty of seats. We don't want to have any hollering or yelling or swearing. That's not the whole point here. Again, this is an informational and educational meeting for you guys. It is very important. I feel that this is very important because I don't have anywhere else to live. And I feel the co-op is our only option, that we can control what we do. Any other option, to me, we have no control. And you all know what it's like out there to try to find an apartment. You know what the prices are like out there. And we have a very special place here. And I want us to keep this a very special place. I want us to own it. I want us to make it even better. I think everyone would agree with that. We will stop the meeting if people interfere. Again, we will ask them to leave if it becomes a problem. We're going to follow our agenda, which you should all have. And so the other job I have is to introduce you to the precinct captains and the co-op committee members. Now, the precinct captains and the co-op committee members all have these lanyards. Could you stand up, please? And you can come to any of us, and we need assistance, we need help. The co-op committee has done all this work on their own, and any help we can get from anyone, we'd appreciate. We're following the agenda and not adding to the agenda. All right. The other thing I want to show you is, you should have received it, and it's at the table. It's the precinct captains, co-op committee members, how to reach us, and streets we each cover. So this is the piece of paper, you should have it. So you have questions, you can go to that person if you live on that street. Okay? Now I'll hand over the meeting to Will.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Pretty well? Let's see if I can get this mic here. Okay, so quickly we're going to go over the agenda. The agenda is me. Cindy already did her introduction. We're going to go over the members of the FRAC. Have a little clip here about what's been going on with other mobile homes and kind of the things they've had to deal with. Then Stan's going to have an opening statement. After this, we're going to introduce you to the attorneys. We're going to have a presentation from Larry, and I think that's going to be a key person here. He's kind of our star witness. And then we have a presentation from Karen and Jeffrey, who was here last time in person. And I think we're going to have Richie, who's actually probably one of our longest residents, who in a way is kind of our historian and kind of bringing us along on this journey of how we got here and why we're here and why we need to move forward with the co-op. And so let's go ahead and talk about the board members. That there's four. There's Sunny, there's Candy Campbell, there is Mimi Joe, and then there's Robert Quinn. Out of those four, we have three of those members that are sitting on the co-op member board, and those are Candy Campbell, Mimi Joe, and also Robert Quinn. And so I think that speaks to the importance of this and talks to the people who've been a part of this whole journey and what we need to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn it over to Stan. Stan the man, come on up.
Hi folks, my name is Stan Dunn. I've been a Franciscan resident for about 22 years and have been through the prior reiterations of all this. And I really just want to kind of give you guys an idea of what we're faced with right now, what the situation is, and why a co-op is an important element of our future here. The transfer of ownership of the Franciscan Park is going to take place. There's a court order that demands that that occur. So ownership is going to transfer. There's not a status quo option. Things aren't going to stay the way they are right now. Transfer has to happen. There are two pathways for that transfer to take place. One path is similar to the situation we currently have, which leaves us without total control of the park and will require a reevaluation of the value of the land the park is on, which is definitely going to create an increase in your property taxes, and that's going to have to be passed through. That's a cost that nobody's going to absorb, so it's going to be passed through, and it's going to require a reduction in services, an increase in rent, or more likely both. So that's option one. We do nothing, the transfer occurs, and we all get a price increase in our rent and a reduction of services. The other pathway is the co-op. This would create a nonprofit entity that the residents will have 100% control of. We will elect the board of people that are residents. The whole board will be made up of residents. And the park management will be determined by us. The big takeaway here is there is a special law in California that allows for an exemption of property tax reevaluation specifically for mobile home parks to become co-ops. That is a specific law in this state. So if we become a co-op, the transfer can take place without an evaluation of the land. No property tax increase, no rent increase. The residents have to decide which of these two paths to take. So the one, obviously, we really don't want. The co-op option requires 2/3 of you at least to participate in the beginning of this co-op, in creating it, in funding it, in making it happen. So it's really important that we get everybody on board with this. The letter that we all received yesterday puts to rest many of the weird rumors that have been floating around about where Link Housing stands on this issue. Link is not opposed to the co-op. They just are waiting for more information before they can give it its approval, and that's why we're having these meetings. Once we can demonstrate the residents' support for the co-op, and now that we have the legal means and the financial backing to do this, they're prepared to approve this deal. As for the upfront money, everybody needs to understand what that's for, this $2,500 that we want. That is a one-time thing that goes into an escrow account with your name on it, where it earns interest, and from that seed money is going to be the funding to create the loan, to create the co-op, to pay legal fees, to pay title transfer fees, all of the kind of money that goes into a transaction like this. It's very expensive. And that's why we're asking everybody to chip in so that we can spread those costs across the whole park. Once the co-op exists, the first order of business for the board is going to be to replenish your money, and that remains yours. It's not refundable until you leave the park. But when you do, that money comes back to you with interest. So your money is safe. The only way you could even lose a portion of it is if we put up the money and people fail, and we don't end up with a co-op. And trust me, $2,500 is nothing compared to what you're going to pay in rent increases if this place transfers without a co-op. As far as people that are going to sit on the fence and say, oh, I don't want to risk my money, I'll wait until the co-op is formed and then I'll buy in. This $2,500 figure is for the charter members of the cooperative. Once the co-op is formed, that $2,500 may go up. So it's not a guarantee that those of you that want to play it safe and not take any risk, those of us taking the risk are getting that deal. People that want to join after the fact, it might be higher. So So anyway, this endeavor is really America in miniature. What we're trying to do here is create our own little democracy in the Franciscan, where everybody has a vote, where you elect your board, where the board represents you, where all of your interests are cared for by your neighbors and not by nameless, faceless people that we've never met, making all the decisions about how we financially manage this place. So we want to say in our own future, and this is the first step to achieving that reality. So please, we really do need to have everybody sign on and support the cooperative. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Wonderful. I think it's very clear what we need to do. I'm going to ask Shirley to come on up, and she's going to share where we are and what's going on next.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to present to you today Larry Matthew from the National Cooperative Bank, and he's here to explain to you the ins and outs and the nitty-gritty of co-op financing as it applies here at the Franciscan Mobile Home Park. So please give him a warm welcome, and without any further ado, here he is.
Thank you for that warm welcome. It's good to see everybody in person. I think the last time you saw me, I was up on that screen, probably about 2,500 miles away. I think the last time I was on, I gave a little bit of an elevator spiel as to what National Cooperative Bank is. I'll just go over it again. We were created back in 1978.
Louder.
We were created back in 1978 as a government enterprise, much like Fannie and Freddie, to take care of the underserved market of cooperative housing. Then the Reagan administration came in, your former governor, came in and asked us not to be that, and so we privatized ourselves and became a private enterprise owned by our own members, co-ops. Some of the co-op names you might know of, Land of Lakes is a co-op. They don't own us, but they are part of us. There's also a big grocer on the East Coast that owns us, that is one of our owners. Let's see, the largest co-op in the United States is called Greenbelt Homes, which is located in Prince George's County, Maryland, which is also one of our owners. And they were established back in the 1940s as a co-op. So that's how far back co-ops go. So over the years, we wound up acquiring more expertise. We are the largest provider of cooperative housing to Fannie Mae. Also in the private market, we have a New York City office that probably has about 45% of the market share up there. My practice takes care of anything outside of the New York City area. I've financed co-ops in Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Kansas City, and out here in California. Right now, we as a bank are creating several different co-ops, ground-up co-ops in Kansas City, Iowa, and we're just recently working on 2 in the Colorado market. So the cooperative housing market is pretty strong and continuing to go forward because it basically gives you, the homeowner or the resident, the member, self-control over yourselves. The other aspect of it is I've probably converted about 5 mobile home parks into cooperative housing. One of the most recent ones, I wouldn't say it was recent, probably about 5-6 years ago, I converted one down in outside of Los Angeles, Hermosa Park. That was probably about a 100-unit project. That one had a mix of people in it also, such as what you have here. You have a portion of the residents who are low to moderate income housing. There's a stipulation in that regard that they had to maintain that. Other residents help them, much like you want to help your own residents. But what they did is they determined that they wanted to have their own self-control, and they also bought it from somebody who was similar to a link in their ownership. So they wound up having self-control over themselves. So I want to read a little bit of something for you so you understand what a co-op is. And this was done by a fellow by the name of Terry McKinley. And what he was a mortgage broker up in the Minnesota area, and as it turned out, he was a former employee of National Cooperative Bank. But he gave guiding principles, what he said is senior cooperative housing, but they're they're very applicable to what you're trying to accomplish at this moment in time. And that is a community. The sum of the community is better than the individual parts. You want to work to protect the members in all possible respects, financial, physical, and social. The dedication of the individual to the cooperative creates a community vibrant enough to fulfill those needs. Most important, you have ownership and control. Individual members collectively own all aspects of the cooperatives. You have a board of directors elected from you as the individual members, where they run it for the best interests of yourselves and for the community and as the individuals. And a co-op is different from other housing types in that the members have the choice to come together to act collectively rather than as disparate individuals. That's the biggest part about being a co-op. And that's what you have before you. Now, I gave you a little bit of a preview when I was on the video teleconferencing as to what the existing debt is on this property based upon my knowledge that I have at this particular time. And I kind of confirmed that with Link's representative the other day. But I understand that we have somebody in the audience who is familiar with the bonds and how they work. Would that gentleman stand up and identify himself and tell us how they would work?
Not sure what your question is, but I understand how it works.
Come on up.
Come on up. Welcome to Franciscan, Larry Matthew. Ralph Holmes? There you go. So Ralph could explain to you how the bonds work.
So I did not prepare any remarks, was here to actually listen and learn. But the municipal bonds work, they were sold to the public, they're owned by investors. There's different tranches of bonds that are outstanding. You've talked about sort of what the rates are and that kind of information. Okay, so the bonds are callable now. They're held by investors, which there's a variety of different investors, not one. The bonds right now can be called. I think we've talked about that. They're refundable. They can be refunded and save a lot of money. And they've been in that mode for quite some time. They're tax exempt, meaning that the bondholders don't pay interest or don't pay federal or state income taxes on those. So the rates are eligible to be much lower than, say, taxable bonds. I'm not sure really what your question was, or
Just since you're here, you understand how they work. You're the best source to explain to them how the bonds work. Could you also explain how much fee income is generated out of those bonds that goes to everybody else, as opposed to being towards the debt service of the bonds?
the fee income? So, for example, I don't know what your question
Well,
is.
bond counsel always gets a fee, and then you got
Sure.
another management fee, then something goes back to the city. Somebody always has their hands in their pocket when they do a bond financing.
That'd be true with anything. So when there's a financing, there's cost of issuance, whichever financing that might be. If you get a mortgage on a home, you have fee income associated with that. Any kind of financing has fees, but they all do. That's true.
So, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Sure.
you can be a pinata up here just the way I can.
Yeah, sure. No, no,
I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for doing that.
No, go ahead. I think this is an example of where we're really serious about being inclusive and really about education.
Yeah. So the bonds carry a lot of weight to them. They have a very low interest rate. But does anybody today know what the 10-year Treasury rate is today? 10-year Treasury rate, as of yesterday, was 2.06. Right now, when I told you when I was up on that screen, I underwrote $53 million as to what the current outstanding bonds were. Is that about right? 52.5, I think. Well, that's all inclusive, because I got that from sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. They gave that to me. And quick, hang on one second. So just so you're aware, I've also been in contact with Link's consultant, Mike Devlin, who's been here at this property, and he has been able to provide me certain information. We have a very good relationship and contact, so I've gotten that information. So the bonds themselves right now, as tax exempt bonds, are probably running about, what, 3.5%? Somewhere in there?
It depends on the rate, but
Yeah. It's under various tranches, so they get all different type of rates on that, under that basis. So if you were to do the financing today with the National Co-op Bank, basically it's one whole loan, $53 million. We'll just use that as the example. And what it is, it's all paid under one rate. And the rate today, let's see, I'm underwriting it at 5%. That's the rate that I'm going to use right at this moment, because rates can keep on going up and down. I would probably say the all-in rate at a later point in time, if you got it done this year, could probably be about 4 to 4.25%. Don't hold me to that. But anyway, that's where you'd be. So that's a significant amount of debt service relief that you would have. And what I stated the last time on there was that given where I was with my underwriting at 5%, that there would probably not need to be an increase in your rents at this point in time. Now, you just Googled and found out what the rents are going to be if this doesn't become a co-op or it goes something else. It goes up to $2,800 on average up here. Now, it's also my understanding that there's a significant amount of reserves, $3 to $4 million in reserves. Now, would that be applicable towards the payment of the bonds themselves? Yeah, okay. So if we had a loan amount of $52 million, just keep these in mind, and there were $4 million in reserves, which is pretty much close to what they have in place right now, that would drop it down to $48 million. Keep that in mind. But what you don't know at this particular time in your community is the fact that you don't know what your infrastructure needs are. And your infrastructure needs are anything that has to do with water, sewer, cable, electric, and anything else in here. So you have to be prepared for that. So I would say that if at any point in time, and you're going to have to do an assessment of what that is, and I would require you to do an assessment of that, let's just say it would cost you another $4 million. You're back up to $52 million. But you still have sufficient monies in which to do the debt service, but you're not going to have to dig into your pockets to do anything else relative to your relative to your infrastructure. And this is pretty much of an older community. And like everything else, we all get older. We all need to have a hip replacement. We all need to have a knee replacement. But in this particular case, it's going to be sewer, water, or something else. So you got to keep that in mind. And that is just the basic reality of this. So right now I'm operating that you're going to have, right now, roughly $52 to $53 million worth of debt. At a 5% interest rate, that covers you for all your needs. If interest rates drop, you'll get the benefit of that. But that's what I'm working with right now at this point in time. Now, I'm going to ask a very question that I ask everybody else when I'm standing in front of everybody. Of you people who are, is there anybody in this room who would not want to go forward with the co-op that would stand to have a financial gain from this? Could you raise your hand? Okay, nobody's, wait a second. Did I see a hand go up back there?
What's the question?
The question is this. If the co-op does not go through, is there going to be anybody in this room who's going to stand to have a financial gain if a co-op doesn't go through? It's a very simple question, because I understand there's always competing forces going back and forth in this.
So let's actually, we have a member from Alliance Homes. Could you speak to that, Mr. Grant?
Oh, come on up.
Come on up. Kind of talk about a little bit your dynamic.
Come on up. This is like Monty Hall. Let's make a deal. Come on up. Grant what?
Gilliam,
Grant.
Alliance Homes, nice to meet you. I don't know if there would be a financial gain or loss at this point.
The reason I ask you is that people always talk about how Alliance, great organization, beautiful homes. Maybe there's some optics involved and other people involved. So just kind of talk about where you guys come in on this and how you think about it. And you're here.
I am here. I was here last time. I'm here to learn just like everybody else. I think there would be more details that I would need to know before coming to a conclusion.
Well, the question was, do you feel that there's a financial interest one way or the other, a co-op or not co-op? Or
Alliance Homes, we tend to do better when housing values are going up.
Okay.
So whatever is going to cause housing values to go up would
What would that be?
a well-run community, lower rents, up-to-date infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into home values.
So co-op
But
would
if,
be that.
but if, and this kind of goes back to its answer, if Alliance were to come in and put an offer to buy this property, I'm sorry, if Alliance were to come into this community and put an offer to buy it, whether it be $53 million just at the base rate, and you were able to accomplish that, would you buy it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would happen then to the real estate taxes?
The real estate taxes would go up.
And that would go up pretty substantially.
I don't know what you're paying on a tax exempt status now, but I would guess.
No,
it would go up.
no, this is real estate taxes. Not the taxes on that.
The taxes on the
real-
property or
no,
the taxes on the individual homes?
No, the real estate taxes for the property. For the property.
You would be going from a nonprofit or a tax exempt co-op to,
No, it's not a co-op yet. It's an easy question. So if you bought it, it's not a hard question. If you bought it, $53 million straight up, you transfer it into Alliance Homes, you're taking out of a nonprofit situation with a lower tax base into a profit situation or a nonprofit, but you've transferred the value. Would you be subject to an increase in real estate taxes?
yes.
And you know how much that would be?
No, a couple $100,000 a year maybe?
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
The county would assess it. Needless to say, your real estate tax is what you're operating under a reduced real estate tax at this basis. If it were transferred over to somebody else, the real estate taxes are going to go on up. That also means your rent is going to go on up. By the same instance, they're going to have to turn around and do all the things that I just enumerated to you relative to your infrastructure. If they go out and put $3 million into itself, it's just going to jack it up even more. Thank you, Grant.
Now, I want to thank Grant for that, because we did put him on the spot, but I think it's important to understand he's been a part of the community in a way, and I want to thank him again. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all those who participated. Didn't mean to set you up, but you're here. And this happens to me also, so I'm here to explain things, but thank you. Any questions for me?
Actually, I do have a question.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't understand the cooperative. I'll be honest with you, and I'm here to learn. I wasn't here to present at all. But one of my biggest questions was, what does it do to rents versus a refunding? Because I know a refunding would save, between $80 and $100 per month per coach. And so my question to you, and I don't know the answer, is what is your cost of capital? Because you're going to have to borrow the money, you're going to have to lend the money, and homeowners have to pay for it. And so that's my question versus the tax exempt structure. The other question is, can you do longer than 20-year financing? Because in the tax exempt market, you can do a 30-year financing. And I've heard that 20-year was what you're referring to, which means people would have to pay the money off sooner.
Correct.
There's benefit for that, because you're going to pay less interest. At the same time, you're not going to spread over as long a period of time.
Correct. Okay. Good questions. Thank you. Let me address that. I think I addressed part of it beforehand in the basis as to what the interest rate is that you're currently paying on the bonds right now, roughly about 3.5%, somewhere in there. And my rate that I put in there, as I said, was 5%, and that's what I'm sticking with right now on $53 million. Okay? That's my baseline right now. That in turn does not raise the taxes up. That does not raise the rents up for everybody. That they could stay as they are. So I think I answered that question. There's no increase in the residents' monthly charge at that particular time. Okay? Because it's staying flat. That's the income that you got coming into it. And that's taken into consideration what you were paying relative to fees to anybody else, not you, but as the bonds are structured, that goes away. That's not an expense that you have to worry about anymore. It goes directly to the top line revenue. Okay, it's not an expense anymore. Your second question was term. Okay, so I'm suggesting that.
You're going from 30 years to 20.
Right, okay. And there's a reason why we're doing this on a 20-year term. Because in 2053, you have a section of this park that goes into, and it's called the pedesticide, that its lease comes due. The effective basis of putting this onto a 20-year amortization schedule, 20 years straight, is the fact that it will pay off the $52 million in a 20-year period of time, making the property debt-free. And in that particular time frame, we're going to make sure when I say we, collectively, and I'm going to work with Karen on this because she works with an organization that I spoke with that's going to provide you technical assistance. It's a young lady, I shouldn't say, it's a nice lady by the name, Kim Kuntz. What's
I
this?
can tell her she said she was young.
Well, the organization, and Karen actually sits on the board too with them. And what's the name?
California Center for Cooperative Development.
California Center for Cooperative Development. You need technical assistance. That technical assistance is going to help you overcome any and all issues that you have relative to being a cooperative in the formation of it. The other thing I'm going to recommend is that you have a good, strong management company come in here. And I got just the people who'll do that. And it's a John Stewart company. They're right in San Francisco. I work with them. They manage a number of co-ops that I work with right now. And that's what you need. Because when I understand it right now, there's a lot of distrust with Link. Whether you like it or not, you guys got a bad taste in your mouth. And you got to start right from scratch. All right? That's what you have to do. Now I'm going to ask another question, kind of a sensitive question. How many people think this is a scam? So I started working with Shelley probably, 18 months? 2 years. 2 years I've been working with Shelley. I actually had introduced her to another attorney in which to do that. The chemistry wasn't right. I could see this thing going down in flames. I brought in another attorney, which is Karen and Jeff at this point in time. Chemistry seems to be better. They're out here, they're working, that we've had any number of conference calls and we've done stuff like that. As I go through the country and I'm looking at other co-ops that I've done, co-ops that have been in place for any number of years, 40 years, longer than what you were even contemplating at this point. Section 8 type properties, fully Section 8 type properties, half, a quarter. They all have a membership fee that goes into it. And it can range anywhere, and this goes anywhere from Boston, Atlanta, Chicago, Kansas City, whatever. They all have a transfer value. They all have a membership fee. And it could range anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000. In San Francisco, we have limited equity co-ops that have a membership fee of $50,000 or greater. So asking for $2,500 up front for you all to have some skin in the game. And the reason why I'm asking for that is that I've been working for free. Shelley's been paid. You know, I only get something out of this if I make the loan. And my object here is to try and make a loan for you so that you can have your own community. That's what we do. That's what the bank does. But the $2,500 goes towards a lot of stuff. And there is a lot of heavy lifting that has to take place in order to make this thing work. And I don't know about you. Mark, where's Mark? Raise your hand again.
You walked out.
Oh, Mark walked out. Okay. All right. You go in and get a haircut. You have to pay for a haircut. Is that correct? Right? Okay. You go into the grocery store, you got to pay for something. Well, we have two fine attorneys sitting over here who've been working on this for probably about a year with me that haven't received anything at all. And there is a lot of heavy lifting that has to go on in this place. What they have to do at this point in time is they have to do co-op formation documents. They have to get down to the town. They have to talk to the town about putting together a regulatory agreement. They have to see how the bonds are working, what has to be done, the funding mechanisms on there. There's a cost to that. You also need to check out what your title restrictions are on this property and what easements you have. I've been walking through the property today and I see a lot of pipes coming down. I'm asking, are there any easements in place for that stuff? Do you know? Are you getting any monies from these people for dumping water on your property? Who's taking care of the sediment? So this is all research stuff that has to be taken care of. So if you initiate the fact that you put in $2,500, that becomes your set transfer value, so to speak, at this point in time. Now, what I also suggested today was the fact that you have the FRAC committee. And what they should do is set up an ad hoc finance committee. And the finance committee could figure out what freight everybody could put into this thing. And I understand that you have residents in this property who are receiving food assistance from everybody, and that's very noble. And you want to take care of them. But that's up to you as a group to take care of. I can't facilitate that for you. You all have to take care of it. Take care of your neighbor. That's what a co-op is all about. So I have to leave that up to you. By the same instance, I asked them to put together a technical committee so that you could start looking at that aspect as to what your infrastructure is, what the paperwork is. But nothing is free. Nothing is free on that. I don't get paid on this. I make a loan. But everybody else who has to do something for you has to be paid. The $2,500 is chump change in comparison to what your rental would be, $2,800 average, and finding a place to go to. So I'm not here to solve your problems. Help me help you solve your own problems. All right? So you put together a finance committee and figure out how you want to do it. But I'd also like to have some type of a deadline to get this thing done for yourselves, because this is an opportune time to try and figure out and get this thing done. And I think this would be a very good time period in which to do this. All right, for the gentleman all the way in the back who's been waving his hand, he's going to take off on me. You want to come forward?
Thank you, Larry. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sunny Kinikini. For those of you who don't know me, thank you, Larry. Welcome to the park. I am going to repeat the same question that I asked you, Larry, in the last meeting. When we started this project, your promise was refinance the loan and transfer the ownership to FRAC, right?
I didn't promise anything. What I said is that it would get transferred over there. I make no guarantees on anything.
That's it. There's no guarantee, folks. You heard it.
Excuse me. The only guarantee I could give you is that you and I are going to die at some point in time.
Right. But the ownership of the park,
And you might die sooner than me.
the ownership of the park by this cooperative will not happen even we die. Anyway, I'll bring your attention to the court order. I'm sure you're aware of that. The court order says this park's ownership will transfer to the Franciscan Housing Corporation. You know that, right? If you don't, then I would refer you
No,
to...
I actually saw a letter that came
So
in.
my
that said-
question,
no,
Larry, is
Sonny,
this.
Sonny. Oh, I'm sorry. I actually saw a letter that that Link would go ahead and transfer it into FRAC.
Where is the document that says that?
There was a letter that was sent out to everybody, and that would be memorialized by your attorneys.
Okay, Larry, I have this document on the court order signed by Shelley saying the transfer will be to FHC. This is the court document stipulated by Shelley. So,
All right, Sonny,
Hold on.
Sonny, I'm not an attorney. I'll let Shelley
Yeah,
address that
okay.
and the other attorneys too. I'm here to help you finance this cooperative if you want to do so. If you want to argue what the legal transfer is, I'm not going to argue it. I'm just going to go and sit down.
I'm
Because this is
helping
not a-
them understand the
So
project.
that is up to your attorney to address. Let them address it if that's what the case is. I'm not going to debate that point with you.
Okay.
So we've got that question, we'll address it in a minute, please go sit
What
down.
is the justification for the 2,500 membership fee?
Okay, so we're continuing.
We have other options here.
Okay, guys, this is what we're gonna say. Thank you, Sonny, for coming up. What is important,
There is another option.
and I think what is clear, I think everybody's familiar with Sonny. Let's give him a hand. Everybody's familiar with Sonny. Everybody knows Sonny. Everybody knows Sunny very well. So moving along, I think what's key here, and I think what's important and what Sunny is alluding to is there has been court orders. And there is a possibility that you can get hung up on the literal aspect of every word in a court order. But again, I've actually been my own litigator, and I've actually been in court, probably more than some court, in front of judges and most attorneys. And with that said, is a finding after hearings is an understanding at that time. And thereafter, attorneys who are part of that findings after hearings can negotiate. And that's what's been going on. And as recently as in the past week, the two attorneys that have been negotiating have formed a letter that have given the nod that we get our ducks in a row, we can do a co-op. And Link knows, as the representative of the attorney, it's not in their interest to say, oh, no, 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 because then they color the issue when we go back to discussion. And I think Shelley is perfect where we go ahead and have Karen come up and talk now.
Yes, please.
And Shelley can kind of follow up on that.
Thank you very much. I think Larry did an excellent job of presenting the opportunity that the National Cooperative Bank is providing to the residents here at the park, and I hope that everybody listened to that very carefully. If 2/3 of the residents say yes, we want to have a resident-owned park, we can do that. I'm just here to tell you that we can push this through. I have been in countless phone calls with Link Housing's attorney, and we're in communication with this process. They don't object to this process. They know there's a court order to transfer the park. And if the resident, I think my own personal view is they welcome the residents' participation and their efforts to inform themselves about this transfer and to become informed and involved civic participants in this process, because it affects your home, it affects the value of your home, it affects your future, it affects the future of this beautiful piece of property. Many of you have lived here 40, 30 years. It's important. It's very important. And it's important that we get this right. So do not believe that because the settlement agreement says it shall transfer to FHC, that it cannot transfer to this cooperative that we're trying to form here today. Because it can. And Link Housing distributed a letter to each of you yesterday affirming that. It's not a secret. We're not trying to hide the ball. It's a process. We're in communication with them. So at this point, it's a turning point for you, because if 2/3 of you sign up for this co-op, it's gonna happen. And you're gonna own the park. So Larry has flown out from the East Coast to talk to you in detail about the technical aspects of this. He told you in the video conference on the 18th of May that he thought the interest rates could possibly close close to 4.25, and he reaffirmed that today. That is cheaper than the existing debt out there already. Larry has told you today that he is not just a banker worried about interest rates and worried about the bottom line. He works for a bank that's dedicated to co-ops. And if you form a co-op, you're not just going to have a banker saying, where's my mortgage payment? You're going to have the technical assistance of the National Cooperative Bank, NCB, helping this park achieve its full potential.
That's right.
Don't you want to do that? It's your home.
Yeah.
Do you think that for the past 10 years, when we have gone to these FHC meetings, do you really in your heart of hearts believe that the full member FHC board was looking out for the benefit of each individual homeowner? Do you have that belief?
No.
This is why.
I don't trust Link right now.
This is why we have a team of lawyers, we have a banker, we have lending that's going to be able to close. And if for some god-awful reason we got 2/3 and we had $2,500 put into the escrow account from 2/3 of the people, and then Link Housing said, ha 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 ha, tricked you, you better believe I will go to court for you and argue in front of Judge Weiner or any San Mateo County Superior Court and say this has to happen. So if we get 2/3 of the residents to say yes and to put their deposit in and to say we want to be a member of a co-op, and if we get all of you to participate in subcommittees that we need to form, there's a lot of work here that needs to be done in order to set this up properly so that everybody has a voice and a chance to participate. If we do that, we can get it done. So I have nothing really further to say except to introduce you to Karen and Jeff.
Everybody knows Shelley. She's a little bit quiet, but she gets shit done. And I think this is about, in Shelley world, she just screamed.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yes, Shelley definitely made the point that needs to be made. Just for those of you that don't know me, I'm Karen Tiedemann, and my colleague Jeff Streifer is also here. We're with Goldfarb & Lippman. We are attorneys who specialize in affordable housing, and we work with a lot of housing cooperatives. And we have helped a lot of both mobile home parks and conventional housing convert to cooperatives. So we know the process, we know what it's like to get through this, but as Shelley said, it is a lot of work. And whether it happens is really in all of your hands here. We're gonna need a lot of help to get it done. We're gonna need a lot of input from all of you. We have a lot of steps to get through. California does not make this process particularly easy. So we have to get approval from the Department of Real Estate. We have to work with the City of Daly City. So there's different aspects of this that are gonna take some time, but we need to get started if we're gonna make this happen. I want to reiterate what Shelley said because we've been on some of the phone calls with Link as well. Link's attorney has been very clear that they don't oppose FRAC acquiring this park. What they want to see, and what their letter said yesterday, is they want to see that you can do it, that you can make this happen. So what they're looking for is for us to do exactly what Larry has proposed. We need a finance committee, we need a bylaws committee, we need a technical committee. We need to start moving the process down the road and get this done. So we're here to help you. We have a lot of thoughts of how to make this happen, but it's really within your hands. So we're here to answer questions, and hopefully we can make it work.
So I think the next part is Richie. Have Ricky come up, or Pedro? Oh, we have questions. Come on, Stan. Let's go through the questions.
Okay, the first question is very basic. How much money is this going to cost me every month and every year? I think the answer to that is $2,500 that stays in an escrow account. One-time fee. But Larry can...
So as I elaborated before, and I told you how transfer values work in other co-ops, I set a minimum of $2,500. I think that's a good starting point for you, but I also would give that part over to your finance committee because you have a number of other residents in this community who do not have the capability. It's up to you to solve that problem, not me. I could say with certainty at this moment, based upon my calculations and the stuff that I have received, at a $53 million mortgage at this point with a 5% interest rate, I don't see your monthly charges going up. And I also understand that the charges are not equal to everybody, so it's all different. But it's a gross number that I look at that's being able to solve your problems and your issues for cash flow.
Next question involves a rather sad topic. In the event of my death, will my heirs automatically become members of the co-op? And if they decide to sell my home, what are they responsible for telling a prospective buyer?
So that's a really good question, and this gets to your bylaws. So as part of this process, we need to come up with bylaws for the cooperative. Typically, what a cooperative's bylaws say is, in the event of your death, your interest in the mobile home cooperative can be inherited by your heirs, but your heirs do have to be approved for membership. So if they're not approved for membership, they can sell it. So that $2,500, as it's appreciated, they could sell it, as well as the mobile home, because you continue to own the mobile home, and get the money. If they want to live here, they would apply for membership to the cooperative. So that's a typical provision, but that's something that, as part of this process, you all have to vote on the bylaws, and that's one of the provisions in those documents that you are going to have to approve.
A follow-up on that. If the heirs are approved as members, would they need to pay anything in addition to the inherited membership?
No, I mean, they would take over the monthly space rent charges, and they would step into the shoes of the deceased in terms of the membership.
Next question. Who is going to be responsible for hiring the various services the park needs? For example, janitorial, landscaping, etc. And does the $2,500 need to be paid up front in full, or are there monthly payments?
All right, I'll address the $2,500 first, because that has been always seems to be a sticking point, and that goes back to something that Shelley and I had spoken about 6 months ago. So I propose that you have a stepped process on this thing, where you would have a reservation. So anybody who wants to participate in the co-op, you'd sign a reservation, put down $500. Then you'd have a subscription agreement when some other things get taken care of, and you post down some more money. That's something that could be workable with your finance committee. It's not a mess. I mean, if you can put the $2,500 up, that's fine. But they're also here to work with you. Now, as it relates to any and all services that are part and parcel to your community here, that's what you have the managing agent for. They, in turn, will be able to go on out and hire the proper janitorial service, the landscaping people, and they will stay on top of that. But this is the big thing. You, as the community, are going to have a facilities group who is going to be managing that. They're going to be looking at the property itself and say, Joe Blow over here isn't taking care of his part. The trash cans over here aren't doing well. You would then go back to your property manager, and he will make sure that those things are taking place. You have to have your own involvement in this thing. You just don't leave it to the property manager. He's working for you. That's what you're paying him a 5% fee for, whatever the fee is, okay? He will have somebody on site here to take care of any and all things that are necessary. He'll collect the rent checks. He'll take care of the problems. But it's up to you and the various committees to have a monthly meeting and make sure that all that is taken care of. All right? And then your meetings, you should have biannual meetings where everybody gets to meet in a room like this, and you can have a bitch session, because that's what typically happens.
Larry, the next one involves you as well. How soon is the $2,500 expected? And if we don't reach 2/3, do we get our money back?
I'm not going to put a timetable on that. That's up to you. All right? You've got all the information. I'll leave that up to your finance committee. If it doesn't go through, if you don't get the 2/3 vote, then you get your money back. From my understanding, Karen, Shelley, and I had spoken about this before. It's not going to go into a bank. It's not going to go into my bank. It's going to go into an independent escrow account who's going to take care of that. And then it's going to be all accounted for. I have nothing to do with that.
What portion do we get back?
Well, if it doesn't go through and you put up $2,500, that's what you're going to get back. But
We get a partial back. Paperwork said we get a partial back.
well, I would say this: so the way I'm thinking that this is working, and I'll tell you how I think it's working. Sure. Absolutely. Yes.
Hi, everybody. Jeff Stryfer with Gulf Harbor Living, and Larry was not involved in developing the agreement with the escrow agent. That was Karen and I and Shelley's input on that as well. So Larry knows generally how escrow accounts work, but I'll tell you how this one works, and that is that the agreement with the escrow company is that it will receive deposits from the members, and that money will sit in the escrow account, and the agreement allows for expenses to be paid out of that account if they're approved by FRAC. Shelley is the person who would be approving expenses. And so once that money comes in, it's going to be safe with the escrow agent. If there are expenses that are approved that will be paid out of that, those will get paid out. But if the co-op doesn't get formed, whatever is left in that account, when it's determined that that money needs to be returned, it'll be returned to everybody who deposited in proportion to what they put in. So everybody will share from the expenses. So the basic idea is that the more people put in, the greater any expenses are going to be defrayed. So if it does have to get returned back net of those expenses, then hopefully, the community will share in the cost of that equally.
Still not getting 100% back.
You won't get 100% back because there will be, I'm guessing there will be expenses that will be approved, because there have been expenses that have been accrued right now that had not been paid. But
So, there are the co-op members, and we actually spend a lot of money out of our own pocket to get this going. We're never going to get that money back when we don't ask it. There are risks, and we all got to know that. And I'm sorry you won't get it all back, and that's okay, but we're being honest about it. I typically don't trust anybody who says you get land for free or at no cost. You'd have to basically be smoking crack. Nothing like that ever happens. So there's going to be cost. You will get as much money back as you can. It will be an open book, okay? Shelley can speak to that more.
I would just like to say that it's an incentive for each one of you to go out and talk to your neighbors about the benefits of a co-op, because if it's successful, and it should be successful, then the $2,500 is your capital account with the organization. And it accrues interest by statute at up to 10% per year. So it's an investment that's making more than you could earn in a CD, more than you could earn in a bank. So you have a financial incentive. If you put in your deposit and you pay the $2,500 in total, you have a financial incentive to go and talk to your neighbors, every single one of them on your block, and tell them, this is our chance for resident ownership, and if you too put in your $2,500, you have a membership interest in the Franciscan Resident Advisory Committee, and that membership interest, in accordance with Civil Code Section 817, earns up to 10% per year as approved by the Board of Directors. And that 10% per year is every year. So if you live here for 10 years, you won't get $2,500 back, assuming the board approves the 10% per year. You'll get $5,000 back. Isn't that a good investment, to invest in yourself?
Hello, my name is Pedro Gonzalez, and I just want to mention something about this, because to me it's very personal. I ask a lot of people, do you want to be a renter for the rest of your life, or do you want to own this land? We have the best opportunity possible in front of you to own completely 100% this land where we are right now. Land in the Bay Area is gold. All of you know what the price of houses and land is in the Bay Area. We have the best chance to own it. In 20 years, we'll be free of payments. These people are right here telling you that it's possible. And many of you still undecided, questioning, can this be happen? Yes, it can happen, but you have to make it happen. They are doing the work. People flying from the East Coast to be here with you, tell you that it's possible. Each and every one of us have to do the work we have to do. If you want to be a renter for the rest of your life, don't be with us. If you want to own this land, 55 acres of prime land in the Bay Area, we have the chance. We have that opportunity. Take it, because a lot of people with alliances right here, they're willing to buy it right there. Not for $2,500. They want to spend 40, 50 billion, $1 million. They're right here, willing to do it. You have the chance for $2,500. Let's do it. Thank you.
Okay, a few of you have asked the same question. After the loan is paid off, do we still have to pay rent? Or will our rent be reduced? That's going to depend a lot on the infrastructure repairs. It's going to depend on how much does it cost to operate the park. It's going to depend on the cost of living increases, etc. But I'll turn this over to Tara.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that because I do work with a lot of co-ops who have now paid off their mortgage, and this is the question we always get. The mortgage is paid off, why do we have to keep paying rent? There are still costs of the park. The park has to be managed and operated, so your rent will not go away ever. Because you as a community, if you buy this park, you as a community have to support this park. And that's where your money goes. You'll still have property taxes, you'll still have management expenses, you'll still have repairs, you'll still need to keep your reserves up for major repairs, those kind of items. Can it go down? Maybe, but that's something that you as a co-op will make the decision based on your finances. And one of the things under California law, once you become a co-op, every one of you every year will get a very detailed financial report about the co-op. You will get a copy of the budget. You will see exactly where your money is going. You will get a copy about where the reserves are, the various reserves for replacements, the operating reserves. You'll know exactly the financial status of this co-op. And that information is required by law to be provided to every member every year. So, you know, in year 19 of the mortgage, you can look at it and say, oh, it looks like maybe we'll be okay. We could reduce rents, and you can start lobbying the board for that. So that's how it works.
This one, it took me a while to figure out what they were asking. After the co-op conversion, is the value of an old home and a new home the same when they are sold? Obviously not. Older homes are going to be cheaper, but I think what they really were asking is the membership cost the same, regardless of how old the home is? Yes. Somebody moving into the park, regardless of what home they're buying, the membership fee that they're going to have to pay to become, and that's going to be required of people moving in. You guys right now kind of have an option, but people moving in, once the co-op is formed, will not have an option. Membership is required, and it'll be the same cost for everybody. And that kind of takes us back to, why should I pay now? I'll just wait and pay it later, because somebody had that question. Later, it might be more. Right now, you guys are all given the opportunity to buy in at the ground floor. $2,500 is what the cost is going to be. A year from now, we might, as a co-op, the board might say, you know what, we need $5,000 for new members.
So I think
So it's not in your interest to wait.
we're going to kind of keep the meeting going. It's been a while. We're going to ask 3 more.
Are you saying we're not going to have any more questions?
No, I'm saying we're going to have 3 to 5 more questions because we got to get home sometime today. Because we're here. But I think what's important is that we're going to have communication. We have a newsletter. We have a lot of things going on. I want Ricky to talk. And I want our attorneys to be able to. I'm going to put these in the back of the room. And if you have an inkling of even wanting to kind of do it, please grab it. The other part about this, as we're coming to a close, we're not over yet. We got 5 more questions, is anybody who's contrary, the first thing you're going to ask them is, do you have a banker and do you have 3 attorneys? Because I think if their answer is no, and then you can figure out the rest of that. This co-op group has a banker and 3 attorneys ready to go.
Okay, next question. It's a little odd wording here. Without the monthly co-op membership fee, it's not a monthly fee. This is a one-time thing. But the question I think really is, how do we build up the extra money for repairing things that need to be repaired on the property? Or conversely, if we have a catastrophic event, say the water system fails, and it's going to cost a great deal of money, how is that going to be paid for? Who would be best equipped to answer this one? Thank you, Larry.
Karen and I are doing a tag team on this thing. So what I initially said up front was that if the bonds are paid off, whatever is held in reserves would go against that. I then said that you'd probably be better off, and I would require this, to have a property condition report done, which would review your whole infrastructure. And in that regard, I said you'd probably want to bring the loan back up to $52 million. So that would set aside $4 million for reserves. And we could structure the reserves in any number of ways. But I would structure it as a collateral security agreement, a replacement reserve, and a general operating reserve. But then it's incumbent upon you, as your board and the finance committee, to continue to put away dollars on a monthly or annual basis to the reserve requirement. And our typical requirement is 10% of whatever the gross revenue is should be allocated towards reserves. There's $2 million gross revenue coming off here, $200,000 should be earmarked directly to the reserves. That's how it's get paid for. Now, if it was so catastrophic that you didn't have, that you had insufficient funds in which to make the payment on that, then a line of credit could be provided to you, which could also be coterminous with your first mortgage and take care and get everything paid off. So there's any number of ways to figure this thing out.
Because I just want to point out again, California law really heavily regulates this area. So if you form a co-op, your board is going to be obligated to report to you annually on the status of your reserves. And what that report consists of is sort of 2 things. One, they're required to do an inspection of the property at least every 3 years to determine what needs to be replaced in the useful life of all of the major components in this park. And then they're supposed to look at that in comparison to the reserves to see how they're going to fund that. So the idea there is that you're not going to be surprised that when things need to be replaced, there'll be money to replace it. That all of that is sort of set out in a plan, and that's part of the financial reporting that you are all going to get on an annual basis, so you can be checking what the board is doing. So this is a pretty heavily regulated area designed to make sure that there are adequate reserves, because the whole point of California law is to protect all of you. Because what people complain about when they live in communities like this is the unknown. So there isn't going to be a lot of unknown here because you're going to get these regular reports.
Okay, very quick. Where's the Podesta land? And if I live on Podesta land, is that also included in the co-op? I believe the answer to that is yes.
I live on the Podesta land, and I just turned over my down payment for the co-op this morning. Yes, the Podesta land is included in the co-op. What our belief is that if the co-op becomes a reality, it gives us a great deal more leverage to negotiate with the Podesta family to either continue increasing the length of time for that land lease, or we will make every effort as the board to try to convince them to sell. And I think we would have the city on our side because we represent low-income housing for the city of Daly City. Even as a co-op, we will continue to serve that role, and that is important to us. Our low-income residents here are important to us, and we would definitely be working very closely with the Podestas to try to make that a reality, that it either become in perpetuity as a lease because they really don't like selling their land, from what I gather, or we will make every effort to convince them that it's in their interest to sell it to us. Only a couple more here, and then we can move forward. This is an interesting one. Thank you. If I buy into the co-op and then I decide to sell, I understand I'm going to get back my $2,500 plus interest. The new buyer is going to have to buy into the co-op. Will it be the same as $2,500? Will it be more? Will they need to be approved? And my concern is, will this be more difficult to sell my home, or will it make my home more attractive?
So a new purchaser into the co-op will have to pay a transfer value to buy into the co-op, which would be the $2,500 increased by what is determined in the bylaws to be the inflationary factor. And you heard Shelley say it can't be more than 10% per year, but you, as part of adopting bylaws, will determine what that percentage is each year. So that's what the new purchaser is going to have to pay. And that money is basically going to be used to pay the seller who put the $2,500 up right now and reimburse them. Does it make it more attractive? I think it makes it more attractive because you control the destiny of the park. There's a lot of pressure on mobile home parks in California to convert to different types of uses. And we're seeing a lot of pressure up and down the state and a lot of park closures. As a cooperative, that pressure isn't going to be here. So I would think for somebody buying in, there's more certainty. There's also more regulation of the rent, which also gives you greater certainty as to the value of your mobile home. So we think it's more attractive.
A couple of you asked this question. The current infrastructure deficiencies that need to be fixed, will they be fixed before we become a co-op?
So typically what we do, if we find out that there's a deficiency in the infrastructure, let's just say it's a sewer system, what we will do is we will escrow, and again, we'll have set, it depends upon how the reserves fall into place, but what we would do is we would, if the cost of the sewer was $1 million, we would hold back or escrow 125% of that and give you a time frame in which to correct it. And the payment of that would come from that escrow. And so before you do something like that, that's why we want to do a property condition report, because we want to find out exactly where the problems are in the park. And this way you could take care of it beforehand. So it could either be, you could do it as possibly a deduction from the seller, if that's so be it, but you could also put it into the capital structure that we're trying to put in place for you. So we've got a number of ways in which to work with that.
So again, I'll just speak to that again from an architectural perspective. When you purchase a house, there's always that deal of where you find and you have an inspection. It's part of the horse trading of the house and the negotiation of that. We might not have that full like a house, but the point is, as a homeowner, as an owner, I'd rather be the person negotiating with the contractor than have a property manager who goes home to another place, doesn't care what they pay, and they might get something out of it in their own home. We might as well be the benefactor of that. And so it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be ours.
This one I can actually answer. Are there two owners of this park, and are they both in agreement on forming a co-op? No, there is only one owner, and that is Franciscan Park. There is Link Housing. Link Housing is an agent of Franciscan Park. They are the asset manager on behalf of Franciscan Park. So Franciscan Park is the owner of the land. I can't hear that. Then I just, I may need to get some assistance on this one. The letter that we did receive yesterday from Link specifically states that Link has not yet received detailed information on the structure of the plan for the co-op from FRAC at this point. Why have they not received that structure information at this time? Shelley and or Karen?
Well, I think what Link is waiting for is for us to give them the governing documents for the co-op, and we need you to give us that. I mean, we have the basic structure, but there are decisions that this group has to make. And then, as Shelley said, we need the 2/3 vote, and then we have what Link needs to sell the park.
Karen, this one will be in your ballpark as well. Do you know how many mobile home parks have converted to co-ops in California, at least recently?
I don't. I know Larry talked about one in Hermosa Beach. We converted a mobile home park up in Davis a while back to cooperative. There's one in Santa Cruz. There were actually two in Santa Cruz we converted probably 20 years ago that are still going strong. I might be able to get that information. There's a couple different sources that I can look at, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Thank you. Now, if anybody is, if this meeting has like convinced you and you're like ready to sign up now, the forms are in the...
Excuse me, I am pro-co-op, I'm going to give you my $2,500, but I am pissed off because you set rules, you break them. I have put my question on a card both times we've been here. No, I'm not sitting down.
No, it's good. Well, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Continue, please.
I thought I had addressed every single question.
Absolutely not. You have not addressed my question either time.
Okay.
And you're up there betting the questions.
Okay.
I see what you're doing.
So what's your question?
I was handing her the questions after I had responded.
If no one minds, we're going to go ahead and take this gentleman's question. Does anyone object?
No.
Okay. Please, come on up.
What is your question?
I think it's important that is a part of the process, guys.
Okay, like I said, I worked with Bob, I worked with Ricky, these guys know me, they know that I'm for the residents, that I'm for FRAC.
Thank you.
I'm for the co-op, this will be in my window, and you will have my $2,500. But I still have a question, and my question is, well I have two questions that I wrote on the card. One, why should any of us trust Link? Link has been screwing us forever. So they say, you know, so I understand that.
Okay, so I can actually answer your question.
It's a question.
Okay, we're going to answer that.
I think we got a partial answer.
Okay, so.
Okay, and let me get to the second question. The second question is, okay, the bad thing that can happen to us is that we don't get the park.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So who benefits from us not getting the park?
So
who has
handle...
a vested interest in the co-op failing?
Okay.
Because we need to know that there are people, if there are people working against this, who they are, why they are. It's comforting to know that Grant and his people actually have an interest in the co-op, because it means that the prices of the homes will go up because the rent will stay low. As everyone here, I think, knows, those two things are in a dynamic relationship. So those are the two questions.
We're going to answer them. I'm going to answer them. Okay, so the co-op committee, before this meeting, actually had a lot of things, a lot of internal questions, softball, hardball each other. And one of them was that we actually wanted to talk about the Link component of this. And being that we're actually working or trying to work with them, we wanted to make sure that this meeting was about an affirmative pro-co-op and not really needing, and this is actually goes to both of your questions, not needing to talk to the negativity or the possibility of what Lincoln is or is not about. And so that was a conscious decision, and that's probably why your question wasn't asked, is that we're actually in conversation with Link, and we probably don't want to have any misrepresentation in that process of the conversation that might put them on a defensive or might put them in terms of making feel that we're not being even-handed with them. So that's the first part of the question there. The second part is actually where we've had other members come up and question informative. And again, that was really Larry's forum. And what we want to talk about is, yes, there are people on Nextdoor, there are people who are negative. And there's people who, and there's speculations about whether they're in deal with grant or whether there's a part of the cut of the loan they will get. And I think that's the question you need to ask yourselves. We can't answer that, and we don't know the facts. All we do know, again, is we have 3 attorneys and a banker ready to go. There are other optics, and there are other people who were in leadership position that have been de-emphasized, whether it hurts their ego or whatever it is. I can't speak to that. I really don't care. What I can speak to is that we're trying to be affirmative. We're trying to set the tone as a co-op to be not but and, to be inclusive, to be constructive, to be ready to go, and to really be here for you guys. We really need you guys. And we really need to be positive and moving forward. Again, anyone who wants to talk about, Stan's right, there's 2 options right now that we understand. There's the co-op, and we got our team, and there's, I don't know, the other thing. I can talk about the other thing. I can talk about, I don't know. But I do know what I do, and I can touch it and kiss it and hug them, and they're here. That's what I do know. And being in my background as an architect, I can tell you the other side, being on the developer side, it's not pretty. And the only way I know that we can to make our future clear is a co-op. So Stan, keep on going.
Basically, you just said a couple, you said the developers are scum.
Right.
No, but there's no developer in the room. Unless there is one. Did I offend a developer? I apologize.
No, but you're asking us
Go ahead.
to trust Link.
No, we're not. We're not.
But you began to answer the question.
Okay.
You began to say, if they mess with us, we'll see their asses on.
That's what Shelley what I'm speaking, I can speak to, and I think it's great that you're on point. Thank you.
I want to say something, because I'm in here and I know what you're talking about. Okay? I want to say something.
Come on.
This is where our mentality has to change. Okay? First of all, I would say, don't say that we're paying.
Full disclosure, this is my mom.
Hi, Mom.
And she wasn't going to talk, but I think it's really important, it's full disclosure. It's my mom.
Bob knows I was very involved,
Yes.
but I've been having illness and I had a total knee replacement. So I told him, you better get involved because I want to stay here.
Yes.
Okay? I lived in Fremont. I had granddaughters in San Francisco. I looked for 6 months. Every weekend I would come up and say, what's for sale? Because I never even knew this existed. I moved here from Texas, so when they said mobile home, I went, oh, that's like trailer trash. Am I going to be trailer trash? And somebody said, not in this place, not the location. I came up, I love it. I've been here since 2012. And I'm going to tell you something. Very involved with Sunny, with everybody. Got tired like the rest of you, and I know what you're saying. Every meeting we had was the history, the negative, the bringing out the link, the bringing up the other. Quit it. Where are we moving forward? That's history. We got to move forward. And what I'm saying now is this. I know how you feel. We have a group. We have to trust them because we have to move forward. Let's change our way of thinking. And I will work hard. I will work on the budget. I'll try to get money for the people that don't.
Trust them. They can explain that, because they have an answer. They have an answer to
The reason is this. They're not negative. They have presented the proposals. They're willing. All these people have worked. We got nowhere except the complaints. We never saw as many people until all of these people got involved with the co-op, went out, knocked on doors, sent flyers. It's a new day. You and I have to start believing it's going to happen. But it will, and I said it, I'm a nurse, and give us something to do, and we will do it. I will even be part of the finance, and I will find the money for those that don't have it. We will work on it.
Okay.
Yay, Mom!
So, I think what's important is that we keep to the structure, and I think that that's important for the co-op. I'm glad we've improvised, and we've kept this meeting in order compared to others. If you want to talk to me or my mother, we're at 55 Dockside all day long. I think what's important here is that raise your hand if you hate being here. Raise your hand if you love being here, because this is an oasis. You can't find this nowhere else, okay? Because this is a beautiful place. So Stan, take it away.
Down to the last couple. What? Yes, I know. Down to the last couple of things. And they're kind of related. So, well, I don't have a question in my hand, then they don't have a question.
Write it down.
So, how many years do we still have on the current lease and or loan, the bonds, the debt? When does that expire? Does anybody have an answer?
2053.
Not the Podesta thing. The 2047? 2052. And I'm not talking about the Podesta lease. I'm talking about the bonds.
2047.
2047. So the bonds are for 2047. What is the occupancy agreement, and why will your existing lease agreement change? I'm not entirely sure what that question is. Cool.
So in a cooperative, rather than having a lease, you will have an occupancy agreement between each of you and the co-op. It functions like a lease, but it will be a little more tenant-friendly than most leases. It's a document that the board, once you elect a board for the co-op, will craft. And as I say, it's what gives you the right to occupy your space. So it functions very much like a lease, but it will be different in that it will include some information about the cooperative and your responsibilities as a cooperative member. Those are going to be the biggest changes.
So we actually got a question from the back that was important, and it's also another question we were going to ask. But I think we're going to come back to those questions because it's really about what next. But I think what's important is that Richie, who's been, again, we're called the historian, really speaks. And he feels very, we gotta give him that time, please.
Yes, please.
My name is Ricky Rubio. I've been representing you, the residents, on the FHC board against Link for the last 12 years. And along with my other colleagues on the board, we have fought to keep the rents affordable. That was my goal originally 12 years ago. Getting on the board was to accomplish this task so everybody would be able to live here and feel secure and safe. That wasn't always accomplished because unfortunately we didn't have the percentage of the vote. Link and the city outvoted us every time. Now the question is, I worked with Link for 12 years in the city. Did I trust them? No, not for a minute, but I had to work with them. That was the important thing to create change. I know a lot of you are thinking this $2,500 is a sticking point for us, but a lot of you that were here during the acquisition years ago have probably forgotten, and a lot of you probably don't know this, but that acquisition didn't come free to the residents. The deal at the time was Link had to get 2/3 of the park to agree to a $100 increase on the rent, which a lot of you are still paying today. The new buyers have inherited that $100 a month. And the deal at the time was if you put up the $100, you wouldn't have a rent increase for 5 years. Well, what happened after the 5 years? Link put a 12 to 15% raise on everyone, and I believe that was the beginning of the no on 50. But if you divide that out over the 5 years, there's the 3% that would have been, you would have gotten anyway. So not only did you get the 3%, you also got $100 added to your rent, which you're still paying today. Now, the co-op is asking for a one-time fee of $2,500. One time, which all of us know we couldn't go out today, and that wouldn't be 1 month's rent in an apartment. And it would be just probably a studio. So please don't think that this is unusual or exorbitant, because I believe we gave Link and Hunter Johnson the park through our contribution of the $100 a month. We put them there, and only we can take them away. And we all know that as long as we're under their ownership, things aren't going to change for us. We haven't had a rent increase in a few years now. There's nothing stopping Link to making up the difference coming up. There's no control. They have the control. We have to take it back.
Okay, so we're concluding our meeting here shortly, and kind of the closeout question really is about what is the timeline and what is the next steps. And before I answer that, I want to do a throwdown. And I'm going to do a throwdown for Sonny specifically, and throw down to anybody else who wants to be contrary, wants to be option B in this conversation. And so, with a nod from the financial, we would like to have things underway and in order by August 31st to get the co-op going. That means we want to get your commitment of $500 or more before August 31st and into escrow. That's what we're asking. So grab that co-op, yes, put it in the door, cut us a check as soon as you can. If you have any questions, reach out to your precinct captains. But before August 31st, I'm happy to hear what group and who can pull together, Sonny or anybody else, that can do what we're doing now. I'm ready. I'm ready to hear option B. I invite option B. Competition is wonderful. It's America. We're here for co-op, and I'm strong on that. And I would love to hear who has a banker, 3 attorneys, ready to go by August 31st. Come on down, call me, 55 Dockside, I'm ready for you. Let's talk. Because I know I'm not going to cut it alone. I'm not getting anything other than a beautiful home. But you got to ask yourself, what is the other person about, and are they getting a cut? Because that's really what it comes down to.
That's right.
Okay? So, son, you want to close out? Stan? Who wants to have the final word here?
Shelley should.
Well?
Shelley?
Go ahead, Stan.
Just very briefly, I'm being asked to remind you that these flyers were up at the front desk. This particular sheet shows all of the names of the precinct captains, the streets that they are on, and would be able to answer your questions for, and their contact email information. For those of you on Seashore and Pirate Cove, that's me. However, I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks, so I might be a little late in getting back to you. I'll be monitoring emails sporadically. But please contact your precinct captain with any questions you've got. Get a green sign if you are pro co-op. Put it in your your window.
A
Tell
second
your
part of
neighbors.
this, going forward, when you cut that check or whatever, please talk to your neighbor to the right, talk to your neighbor to the left, talk to the neighbor in front of you. We need everybody to get involved. We cannot do it with just our three attorneys.
Spread the word.
We need everybody, please. I think this has been successful. I think it's going to get greater, more beautiful.